All right, welcome back to QuickBooks. Today we're going to be taking a look at chapter 12. Okay, so company file setup. Now we went from chapter 1, which is the introduction of QuickBooks, but what chapter 12 does is it helps you set up your company file. That usually should be the first thing that you should learn is how to even create or even set up your file in the first place. Now, chapter 11, there's a lot of things that we haven't learned yet. Okay, so if you've gone over the chapter 12, there's a lot of things that we haven't entered in or things that we will learn throughout the rest of the class. So taking a look at this, the few things I do want you to at least recognize is when you're creating a company file is how to set up and what are the necessary things that you need in order to set it up. So first things first is we need to start thinking about creating a start date. Now, when we think about creating the start date of your company, the crucial thing that you should know is that generally when you do start your start date, it could either be the at least the day before you start your brand new accounting cycle or when you actually start your business. You definitely want to start at the very beginning of the month. Now, in this case, the book recommends you to utilize the end of the previous month or when you actually officially start your company date. Now, of course, you can start your company any given time, right? But the reason why they recommend you to start at least the day before the beginning of the month is to ensure that you cover all of your expenses and make sure that you record everything on that very first day. If you choose that for the very first of the month, you already lost out on that entire day. So in this case, they usually recommend you. So when we talk about choosing between a start date, whether it's calendar year or fiscal year, right? The best way to measure your performance or best way to make sure that you have accurate information is to start from the very beginning of your either calendar or fiscal year. Now, we talked about what a calendar year is in accounting. So I'll go ahead and review you guys. So a calendar year is pretty straightforward, right? You start from January 1st all the way to December 31st. So therefore, your start date would be technically December 31st of the previous year before you start your company. Okay? Now, but if I'm a company that starts as a fiscal year, right? Any 12 consecutive months, such as I may start as of July 1st and my end of my fiscal year is July 30th June 30th, right? So usually how calendar year and fiscal year is determined based upon when you guys file your taxes. So it's very important because once again, QuickBooks is primarily geared towards taxation. It helps you make it easier for you to file your taxes. So they usually recommend you to either be either the last day of your fiscal year or the very last day of the month. Now, of course, we can't predict on when we'll ever start our company. If you're starting from the ground from ground zero, okay? They best recommend you to just do the last day of the previous month or the month that you start your actual company, right? Do it the day before the first of the month, okay? Usually that's a rule of thumb just because, like, once again, I may establish myself as a fiscal year, as calendar year, but I haven't even opened up my business until June. So if that's the case, then don't waste your time to having to start from January 1st because there's nothing that you can actually put in. what they recommend you to do is that because with that open gap, that allows you to for you to put in all your transactions in between the 1st of January all the way to the 1st of June. In that case, that's too much. That's too many months that you need to you need to add in all the details. So they do recommend you that if you do are beginning your company at a random month and a random day, start at the very beginning of the month. Well, in this case, they recommend you to do the last day of the previous month. Okay, so you can cover June 1st as the very, very start of your transaction. Okay, that's just a recommendation there. Now, once you get through that section here, then we have what's this little checklist for you guys. So it is 12 steps to set up your actual company file. Now, the first thing that you don't have or you don't know is that if you are starting a company, right, from scratch, from ground zero, there is actually a step 0. You need to come up with all the details that are involving with your company. Now, in this case, these 12 steps right here are in case you already have that idea, you have your business plan, and you have all the details, or you are opening or creating a company file for a pre-existing company that already exists. Now, in this case, most cases, what are we going to be taking a look at or practicing is that you guys are going to be creating your own company file and, basically you're going to be creating your own company file. So for those who were in my accounting program, right, that's why I had you guys create a business plan, is because it's going to ask you all the crucial information that you need to know and have to set up your company file. Okay, now of course I did that so that you could practice it on your own as a separate, as a separate or secondary exercise. But today we will take a look at computing or completing the example here in the book. We're going to create the Academy Photography company file, okay? But utilize your own business plan, okay, as a secondary resource for you to practice plugging in all of your information in there. So once again, what I had the accounting class do, and so for the future, for Nathan and Inga, you guys are going to be taking a look at the business plan, and it's going to be asking you basic questions that you need to know in order for you to complete your company file. Because one thing that I can tell you for sure is that if you start creating your company file and you don't know the answer to the question, you can't skip. However, you have to complete the entire questionnaire, okay, in order to proceed and create your company file. If you can't answer that question and you just stop in the middle of it, you can technically leave, but however, the possibilities of returning back to that page, you could maybe, you could be able to resume it, but most cases, a lot of the times, it's going to get lost and you might have to recreate a brand new company file, and you can't restore anything except for maybe a few informations, or you might just lose that company file. So you have to complete the easy step interview from step 1 all the way to the end of the questionnaire, okay? Or to the end of the interview. So that's why it's very important that you need to know that step 0 exists if you don't have a pre-existing company, okay? And you're creating a company from scratch. You need to know all these details. Basically, you're creating a business plan that's going to entail details like, what's your company name? What do you guys have employees? Do you sell a product or good or service? Do you have inventory? Will you have employees? Okay? Those are very important questions that you should ask even in general as a a business owner, because you still have to fill those details out, especially when you're dealing with applying for your business license. Okay? But let's go ahead and take a look. So page 346, make sure that you have everything prepared, and these are the 12 steps that you're going to prepare yourself in order to create your company file. Now, I will tell you right now, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, okay, are definitely going to be the things that we're going to be looking at today. However, step 4, right, entering open balances from the balance sheet. That's going to require a general journal. We don't learn that until chapter 13. Okay? And then it says to enter any outstanding transactions, okay? Okay? As the start date. So here, that's going to also involve chapter 13, where we have to do general journals, okay? Then the next one says that we're going to be also, going to be needing to enter the year to end date, okay, from any expenses. So that could include anything like payroll, okay, if that's, or any accounts payable, any accounts receivable, any of those things. All of that's going to be dealt with entering your invoices and entering in your bills. All of that's chapter 2 through 4. Okay? Then the next one says that we're going to be entering our inventory. That we won't take a look at that until chapter 8. Oh, here then we go ahead, set up payroll. That won't be until chapter 10 and 11. Okay? And then it says verify that the trial balance. We don't learn that until chapter 6. Okay? And then it says close the opening balance to equity. We learned that in chapter 13. And last but not least, set up the closing date. We don't learn that until chapter 13. So here we are only going to be taking a look at the first 3 steps to set up your company file, okay? Everything else that we see here, I will briefly go over them and talk about them, things that are very important. But however, this entire steps from steps 4 through 12, all of those are going to be learned throughout the rest of the course, okay? So hold on to these, okay? Now, our assumption is that if we're starting our company from scratch, from ground zero, we will not need to have steps 4 through 12, because the assumption is that we don't have any account balances, we don't have payroll, we don't have any inventory, we don't have anything to begin with. So that's the idea of chapter 12, okay? We're only taking a look at the first 3 steps, okay? Everything else we will learn throughout the rest of the course, okay? So any questions there? Okay. Okay, so first things first is now we're going to talk about how we actually create our company file. Okay. So as we looked at, the very first one is to create or come up with a start date. Okay, so the start date is pretty straightforward, as what I've mentioned before, right? You either, assuming that we're creating a company from scratch, general rule of thumb would be to start on the very last day of the previous month, right? Before you actually start your company file. Make sure it's never the very first day, okay? It's always it's always the last day of the previous month before you actually start your company. Okay, just so that you can cover the very first transactions for that month. Okay, and that will also help you produce more accurate information. Okay, so here you go. So now we're going to start talking about how we actually set up our company file. There are two ways to set up the company file. Okay, the first one is going to be the Express Start, and then the second one is called the Detailed Start. Now, the difference between the two is going to be pretty much how much expertise you have in QuickBooks, okay? Especially when we're dealing with the Express Start. So as you read through the entire book for the chapter 12, it recommends that if you know the ins and outs of QuickBooks, they recommend you to go ahead and use the Express Start. Reason being is because at that point, you should already know exactly how QuickBooks works and exactly how to, set up certain things, certain preferences, okay? And it's recommended because you would know exactly what your company needs. So instead of having to go through a lengthy interview, what you're going to do for the Express Start is it's more for avid users of QuickBooks who knows what they're doing, and they can create the company file instantly and set it up exactly how they want it to set up. Okay? So again, we will take a look at this as well. But first, I do want to actually go over the Detailed Start. Now, if you are not familiar with QuickBooks, right? That's the question here, is that, okay, so I'm not quite sure how to create a company or what details I need to be involved in order to create a company, or even to set up the simplest things. So in this case, the Detailed Start is meant for beginner users of QuickBooks, right? Because it's basically going to walk you through what's called the Easy Step Interview, okay? So the Detailed Start is also known as the Easy Step Interview, right? Right here, okay? Also known as the Easy Step Interview. It's basically exactly how it says in the book. It's going to be an interview process, and it's going to walk you through step by step on how to create your company file with all the details that you need in order to set up your company file. So again, you're going to be answering a series of questions, and once you start it, you can leave at any given time. However, it may be an issue, especially when you're creating if you're trying to open another company file. You may lose the work that you're in the middle of. So that they best recommend you to try to go through the entire Easy Step Interview process once, and go through it once only. Okay, and once you've done that, then you can, if you do make any changes, you can make changes through the company preferences. Okay, which we'll go ahead and take a look at. Now, once again, we're going to go ahead and dive right into the example here. So I will need you guys to help me answer the questions by reading the couple pages. So everyone should be on 348. All right. So all of these windows here, I know they're very tiny, but just try and do your best to go ahead and help read this. Okay, so that's your participation points, is to help me go ahead and create the company file by reading the examples that are in your book here. So as of QuickBooks 2018, it's very important that you need to know that it is called the Detailed Start / Easy Step Interview, or you have what's called the Express Start. Okay. Now I have the QuickBooks 2019. All right. So it's slightly different, like I've mentioned before, right? The difference between the 2018 all the way to the 2021, it's very slightly different. So in this case, the first thing that it tells you to do is click on that create company. Okay, so here you get this window. Now your express start is going to be this start button right here. Okay, in 2019, make sure that you're aware that it's not just start for you guys, it's called express start. So in your book, it should show you a picture of exactly what it looks like. All right, but in my book, it's going to be, or in my QuickBooks, it's going to be start. That's your express start. Okay, the way to be able to access your detailed start or easy step interview is that you're going to go down here, right? And you're going to go ahead and click advanced setup. So here, now I initiated that I'm going to go through the easy step interview. Okay? So once again, first thing that pops up is I'm going to start creating my company information. So the very first thing it's going to ask me is, what is my company name? Now, there's a difference between a company name and a legal name. Now, the company name that you place here is whatever you want to name the file. It's not so if you want to name your company file, my company, Bob's company, whatever I want to do, that's where the file name is going to be. It's going to be under the company name. Okay? So you can name it whatever you'd like. However, the legal name is whatever is going to be the name that you filed with the state and local agency for. So that's the difference between the two. One is a file that you're gonna name the file. So I can name it my company if I wanted to. I can name it Lynn's company, Bob's company, your company. I can name it anything as I want because I'm creating my own company file right now. However, the legal name, once again, is whatever you filed with the state and the legal agencies, right? So in this case, I believe my company file is going to be Academy Photography. Okay, Academy Photography. Okay, my legal name, okay, is going to be Academy Photography Incorporated, right? So I'm incorporated, meaning that I am a legitimate company, right? I have incorporated status. Most legal companies, right, when you establish it, should have some kind of ending. So whether you are incorporated, an LLC, an LLP, whatever it is, make sure that you go ahead and list that in there. Okay. Now the next, go ahead.
Excuse me. For the ID tags, we can use whatever we want also?
Okay, so this is very important because this is exactly why I've mentioned this many times. QuickBooks is meant to help you be able to file your taxes. Now your tax ID is going to come from whatever your business license tells you it is. Because when you apply for your business license, the first thing you should do is also apply for a business tax ID. Now again, if you are not using QuickBooks to help you file for your taxes, you do not need to have a tax ID number. It's only if you are using QuickBooks to help you file taxes. Because what this is going to do is it's going to help you, when you do payroll in Chapter 11 and 10 and 11, you need to use your tax ID number so then you can go ahead and file your taxes and be able to take the proper federal taxes that you have to pay out. Okay. Another thing about the tax ID number is that you also need to use it for if you do sell an item, right? You have to pay sales tax. And if you need to pay sales tax, they need to use some kind of tax ID number to recognize that this is your company. Okay? So tax ID number, once again, if you are a legitimate company, then it's up to you whether you want to place this information or not. Now, so tax ID number, in this case, I believe what's my tax ID number in the book? I think it's like 1, 2.
11 dash 3 4 5 6 7 8 9.
2, 4, 6, 7. Yeah, perfect. All right, so tax ID number, right? Now, if you're a sole proprietor, you can use your social security as a tax ID number because you and the business are one. However, they do recommend you to separate your business or your personal tax or your personal social security number and create a separate tax ID number so that you can file your taxes separately. Okay, but once again, if you use a tax ID number for QuickBooks, it only allows it to make it easier for you to file your taxes. Okay, now it says street address. Okay, I believe it's 123 Main Street.
Yes.
Okay, street, good. City.
Pleasanton, State, California.
Pleasanton,
Uh-huh.
California,
Yes.
right? Zip code.
94566.
Okay. All right. And then phone number.
925 555 1111.
Okay, perfect. And I believe the fax number is
925 555 1112.
perfect. Okay. Email address. Do we have an email address or
Yes,
info?
I think, at Academy, my photo.
Academy biz. .biz?
I believe so.
Okay, perfect.
No, it's info.
Oh, sorry.
INF, and I cannot make the, yes, oh.
Okay. So then therefore, yeah, the book is awful. Okay, Academy photo.info. Okay. So why are they having you answer these questions? Pretty straightforward, right? Because what's going to happen is that when you enter all these information, right? If you're sending packages, if you're sending invoices, it's automatically going to create this for you. So you don't need to enter in your information all the time. Okay? It also makes it automatically make it easier for you to fill out all those information, all those forms, especially when you're creating your checks. Okay? It will pull this information automatically. So the next one, I'm going to go ahead and click next. Okay? And the next section it tells you is you're going to select your industry. So as I've mentioned before, okay, your industry is going to be whatever category that you think that your company belongs in. So as you can see, there's lots of things that such as automotive, right? We have other things like insurance. You have law. And we have other things like restaurant. Okay, so in this case, there's a lot of industries that you can belong into. Okay, and this one is just only to be helpful and useful, especially because when you select an industry, right, QuickBooks is automatically going to start pulling in information. Okay, such as, oh, is this person going to are we going to make sales, right? Are we going to have inventory? Usually that's what it tells you, okay? It starts creating ideas, or starts creating and helps you fill out your interview a little more extensively. So in this case, we are under art, writing, and photography. Okay. So next. So now it's going to ask you, what kind of business are you established as? Okay. So in accounting, we learned that you could establish yourself as 5 different types of organizations. Okay. Sole proprietor, partnership, um, a corporation, nonprofit organization, or a limited liability company. Okay. So here, of course, they give you in like details underneath, right? Just a little fun fact about them. But you know, when we're taking a look at what kind of organization that we establish, it should be on your legal documentation when you apply for your business license from the state and local. What did you establish yourself as? Okay, and in this case, I believe we are an S corporation. Okay, and then we can go ahead and click next. So now it's going to ask you to go ahead and select the first month of your fiscal year. So as I've mentioned before, fiscal year can be anything that you would like, right? It's because this is revolving around your tax, right? Your fiscal year is going to be basically going to be when it is best for you to file your taxes. So most government agencies, right? We know for a fact that they are on fiscal year, and usually their fiscal year starts on July 1st and ends on June 30th. Okay, that's usually because they're usually more busier during the winter, right? We have elections. We have new laws, new taxes that happen in November/December. So they're a lot more busier towards the end of the year. And during the summer is where they actually have time to file their taxes. It just makes it more easier because during the summer, nothing is really going on. There's no mid-season elections or anything. All the you know, state and federal taxes, they've already been discussed and elected already. Um, Nathan, do you have a headphones?
No.
Okay. Can you turn your computer down just a little bit? Because I can hear myself and it's kind of throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I do recommend if you can, either go to the school and get some headphones, so then there's no reverb from the microphone from the if you're using a laptop, the microphone and the camera are right next to each other. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so the fiscal year is based on how it makes it easier for the company to file their taxes. So once again, I've mentioned government agencies, right? They're too busy and swamped with things that they have to do towards the end of the year, right? They have to create the laws, they have to update their tax tables, all that stuff, right? Maybe a new government is in office, maybe switching from Republicans to Democrats, so they have to change and revise a lot of things. There's also things that maybe that the new president have to pass more laws. So they're a lot more busier during the fall. So anywhere between October all the way to January, they're too busy with all that stuff. So that's why it makes it sense, because during the summer, everything there's nothing really much going on. It's just passing through stuff, maybe doing the annual budget, whatever it is, right? So they make the fiscal year, making it more comfortable for them to be able to file their taxes during the summer. Now, in this case, the best way, if you're starting your company from scratch and you're not quite sure when it makes sense for you, file your taxes, then, general rule of thumb is maybe just go through a calendar year. Calendar year is pretty easy. As long as you know, I'm going to file my taxes anywhere between, the beginning of the year, right? Because if I do a calendar year, it's from January all the way to December. So then normally, right, I would just compile all my information and file my taxes sometime between January through April, right? A normal tax year. In that case, if that makes sense for you, then you're going to go ahead and select that you're going to make it on January. Okay, next. Now, the next thing it's going to ask you is to set up your username and password. Now, this is probably the most crucial part of QuickBooks is because we just entered in a tax ID number. A tax ID number is also very sensible data, right? It's almost as if that tax ID number, right, is like a person's social security number. You don't want that all over in the public. You don't want anybody to access that information. Okay? You definitely want to keep that as something that your company only knows, right? So you definitely want to be able to secure your information, especially when we dive into chapter 2 and chapter 4. Okay? Chapter 2, we're going to be dealing with our customers. And when we allow that our customers can make purchases through our website online, therefore we can hold sensible data such as their credit card information. And then we also, for independent contractors, we get to take their social security numbers. So as you can see, the more that you use QuickBooks, you're going to notice that you're going to be entering sensible data, especially customers' information, their telephone, their email address, their actual legitimate address. So therefore, we're holding a lot of sensible data, and it's going to be, very bad if we end up leaving our file open for anybody to access it and they can steal our information. So that's what they tell you very first is that you should set up a username and a password. Now, of course, if you're going through this interview, chances are you're going to forget your information if you don't write it down. Now, of course, you write it down right there. You can also post, someone can grab that at any given time. So in this case, what a general rule of thumb is that if you're not in the mindset to be able to create your account right now, go ahead and skip it. All right. And that's exactly what the Academy for Photography or the book tells you to do. It tells you to just skip it, because I will show you, probably not the end of today, but if we do have time, I'll show you how to set up your username and your password after you have gone through the interview. Now, here's also one thing too. Once you create your company file, okay, and you set it up, yada, 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 and it automatically saves, the minute you close out to QuickBooks and you go ahead and open it up the very next day, it's going to automatically stop you and tell you you need to create a username and password immediately, or else you cannot continue with your company file. So they want to make sure that you secure your information as soon as possible, okay? And once again, if we have time after in this class, I'll go ahead and show you how to set up your users and your passwords, okay? But once again, that is definitely something you could skip, because right now we are focused on more of the interview and getting through the whole entire thing. So in this case, we don't need to set up the username password right now, but the next time you open up this company file, you are obligated in order to move on. Because once again, the more the longer that you set your QuickBooks open to the public, right? Because right now it's on it should be on a computer. It should be on a personal computer. It should be on a company computer, right? It's open to the public, and it can be accessed at any given time. So you definitely want to secure your data. So in this case, I'm skipping it for now, and I'll come back to it later on. Okay. So now the next step here is that we're going to be creating our company file by, okay, so now it says that we're going to go ahead and select where it's going to be stored. Okay, so when you click next, this is where you are going to locate or designate a specific place on your computer for where you want to create the company file. Now for this, you definitely want to create it. Make sure that you create it on the actual desktop, okay? And when you're done with it, then you can go ahead and save it to your flash drive. Because right now, it's going to create my working data file. Now, the first thing it's going to tell you to do is it's going to be automatically in your C drive. Now, if you are not the user of the computer, which most cases, especially when you go to a company computer, you're not going to be able to access any of the files. So they do recommend you to place it somewhere else. So in this case, I've already created a folder. Okay, so I'm going to go to my documents, LVPTA, accounting, QuickBooks class, student portable files, okay, or QuickBooks portable files, and boom, I have QuickBooks 426 for your class. And once again, like I've said, look, I put my company name as Academy Photography, and that's exactly what I've mentioned, right? The very first line, when you type everything in, it's going to automatically take that name, and that's your file name, okay? Now, of course, you can make changes to it if that's not what you really wanted to call it, but in this case, I want to leave it as is and make sure that I create my company file as Academy Photography, and I'm going to go ahead and click Next or Save. Now, as you can see, you're going to get this little bar here, and what it's doing is it's creating your working data file. Okay? So once again, your working data file is the only file that you can use to be able to update your work, enter in all your transactions, and etc., etc. You cannot update your backup or a portable file because what it is, it's just a copy of the file, and that's it. All right, so then there you go. Now it says we are done and we are going to fill out the next section of the QuickBooks. So once again, that is how you set up your company file. That's just to get the file to create the working data file. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be setting up company preferences. Okay. So the first thing it's going to ask you is, what do you sell? Okay. So in this case, right, when you establish yourself as a company, the main goal, right, if you haven't established yourself as a non-profit organization, right, your options is, do you sell a product or a service? Okay. So in this case, it's going to ask you, do you sell services only? Do you sell products only? In this case, I sell both, right? I sell photo packages. I also sell, in this case, I do a service, right? We have photographers that spend hours, right, doing photo shoots. And then at the end of the photo shoot, we either throw in or they can purchase pictures from the actual photo shoot. So in this case, we sell both a product and a service. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Okay. Now here's the next one. Do you charge sales tax? Okay. If you're not in one of those 5 states that do not charge sales tax, then yes, you are probably more likely to charge sales tax, okay? Now, there's a little fun fact here. You can't charge sales tax if you provide services, so maybe this may apply or not apply. If you are strictly a service provider only, you can't charge tax. But in this case, we sell products. Right? Products are 100% going to be charging sales tax for. So in this case, yes, I do charge sales tax. Next. Okay. Now the next thing it's going to say is, do you want to create estimates, okay, in QuickBooks. So, what are estimates? Okay, so it gives you a little brief description up there, but you can learn more, obviously. So they don't kind of leave you out there hanging. What an estimate does is that it's kind of like a sales order, or in this case, if you ever gotten a quote from a specific provider, right, or a specific company, right, you just are searching or scanning through a bunch of different companies because you want a service to be done. So what an estimate does is it's pretty much a quote. You could call in any store and say, oh, can I get a quote on this? And they'll tell you. And then if you're really interested, then you write down the information and then you process it as an estimate. Now, especially for a photo company, right? Most cases, like, right, when a customer calls and they're just interested in only knowing the quote, that you pretty much just say, oh, it's this much an hour, and then that's pretty much it. But sometimes if it's good enough, usually you could schedule with the customer to come and do a walk-in, whatever you want to do. But that's most cases what an estimate is. It's pretty much a quote that you can give to a customer for whatever items that you sell. Okay, so estimates is definitely yes. It's also used for, next. Okay, so the next one is going to ask you, okay, when using statements in QuickBooks. So, especially when you start billing people or when you start invoicing people, okay, you definitely want to create statements, especially when you have customers that have large outstanding balances with you, because we are a photo company, right? Our customers, they have what's called a credit limit. And when they have a credit limit, they can buy whatever they want. They can use our services as much as they want as long as they stay within the credit limit. So definitely creating statements is a necessity, all right? Especially when we sell a product or a service. So yes, so statements, right, pretty much gives a record of whether, a list of a transaction between you and the customer or you and the vendor. So in this case, yes, I definitely want to create statements. Now the next question is using progress invoicing. Okay, so usually this one only comes with if you are planning to have a massive, like a massive project, and you want to split the bill up into increments. That's all that this is. Now, usually if you have estimates, then yes, you should typically have progressive invoicing, okay? Now, once again, we are looking at a photography type of company, and yes, you can have huge projects that can't be split up or billed separately. So in this case, that's definitely recommended. Now, this progress invoicing may not apply for every single company, so that's why it's very important. Well, you have to think about it, right? Depending on what your company is. If you're doing large scale projects, such as, for this case, we have a grand opening, right, for one whole week. Are you going to charge them for the whole week, or are you going to charge them per day? That's the question there. And we're going to take a look at that. Okay. So again, do you do progress invoicing? Okay. And in most cases, or in this case, yes, we do have it. So the next question is going to ask is we're going to be managing our bills that we owe. The purpose of QuickBooks is to make it more easier on us to keep track of all of our bills, all of our invoices, all of the tax that we owe. It's to help us keep track of everything. So yes, you should definitely select yes for this one, because you definitely want QuickBooks to help manage your bills, okay? So yes is already there. Now, notice that most of the things, right, they have recommended next to them. This is just in case, like, once again, you're a beginner of QuickBooks. You don't know what to expect, okay? So sometimes they'll kind of gear you towards to finish the interview and they kind of walk you through it, right? They say usually it's recommended, right? They give you a whole list of what those details entail, right? So once again, this is meant for beginner users of QuickBooks if you don't know what you're doing. And in this case, do you want QuickBooks to manage your bills? Absolutely. Okay. Now the next question here is keeping track of inventory in QuickBooks. So once again, because we sell a product, right? We have a few choices when you sell a product, right? You can sell them as inventory, or you can create them as mere expenses, right? You can have them as supplies and then just write them off as an expense. Now, in most cases, you should keep track of your inventory, especially because we do sell a product. Now, when we get into the inventory chapter, in chapter 8, you're going to realize there are two types of inventories, right? Inventory part and non-inventory part, okay? And what they do is it's pretty similar to periodic and perpetual inventory, which we'll talk about in chapter 8. And basically, it's just a way to keep track of your inventory. And because we do sell a product, it is definitely recommended. Even if you decide that you don't want to sell or keep track of your items, your products as inventory, you can always change it later on. So once again, there it is. I'm going to click yes because we sell products. And again, chapter 8 will talk about inventory as a whole. Okay. Okay. So next thing here it asks is, do you keep track of time in QuickBooks? Okay, so keeping track of time, right? We'll take a more deep look into this in chapter 9. But what keeping track of time entails is if you, especially when you are having employees, okay, they can keep track of their hours, right? If you set them at a hourly wage, right? That's what keeping track of time can do, right? Because we are a photo service, right? We can use time to keep track of the photo sessions that we offer, right? Our photo sessions are hourly long. So that's one of the reasons that you could use the time tracking, okay? Other reasons you could do too is if you have long projects, right? You can also keep track of that as well to, track how much your expenses are as you, keep track of the time that you're spending on that project. Okay, so definitely is recommended because we are a service provider, right? Services are usually based on some kind of time, or it is based on time. So you definitely want to make sure that you do select yes. Okay. Now the next question here is, do you have employees? Okay. Very important question because especially when you're building your company, the first thing you got to make sure is that if your company, if you plan to be small, if you're the sole proprietor of the company, right? And you're going to be dealing with all the books, okay, good luck. It takes a lot to manage a company by yourself. So you always want to have at least one employee, especially when you're going to be given this factor. If you are running the business, you cannot touch your own books. Okay, fun fact. You must hire a second individual because once again, the whole idea of the internal power or the internal control, that guarantees that you as the boss cannot be writing your checks to yourself all the time, taking money in, infiltrating, whatever you want to call it, right? Frauding your own company. In most cases, you know, people always think that, oh, they can write off all their business expenses or all their personal expenses as business expense. You know, that's actually wrong. Now, here's one thing that I kind of find a little odd is that if you do choose to have employees, right? A 1099 worker is not an employee. They are independent contractors. You have nothing to do with them, especially when it comes to placing them on the payroll system. You do not pay any benefits for them. They do not get anything from you except a whole entire check. You do not even take the taxes away from their check. They get whatever they earned full 100%. And they are responsible to file their own taxes. Okay? So that's kind of weird, but you know what? That's okay. I think they just want you to say if you do have a 1099 worker, that's going to be, then yes, include them. So yes, we will have W-2 workers, and we will definitely have 1099 workers. Okay? Next. All right, so now we are using using accounts in QuickBooks. So this is where we're gonna go ahead and click the next button since it's just giving us what we're gonna be looking forward to. Okay, when we click next, now it's asking us how to set the start date. So once again, to start tracking your finances, right, we always start at the beginning of the fiscal year. But in this case, what did we learn? What did we learn? We learned that you have to start as of December 31st of last year or the previous year. In this case, you can start there, but usually you should definitely start as of December, it'd be 31st. What year did I establish this? So I'm going to say we're going to do December 31st of 2018, because I believe we start January 1st of 2019. So in this case, that's when I'm going to start my actual tracking of my transactions. Okay, so you always want to start the last day of your last fiscal year. Okay, that's just a general rule of thumb. So here, I'm already putting it here. Now, if you do start on the very first date, like I've mentioned, you will throw off your information slightly. And it does tell you in the book why you shouldn't do that, because you have to backtrack it. And when you set the closing date, it's gonna be weird because you have to do it after the first of the month, or the first day you started your actual start date. So in this case, that is what you should set it, the last day of your fiscal year. Okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now, it's going to ask me to set up a generic chart of accounts. Okay? And then when we come back, we're going to take a look at setting up the chart of accounts. So in this case, here is because we basically said we belong to the arts, writing, and photography type of industry. So what QuickBooks is now telling me is it's pulling up a bunch of generic accounts for us to set up, right? Instead of taking the time to enter all of this in from scratch, it's going to automatically generate this for us automatically. So we don't need to include it if we don't need it. Now, once again, you can either select all of them or you can select none of them, right? But there are a few useful things, such as obviously sales, right? If we are selling services, we definitely gonna have sales. So that's just something that you want to have them automatically create. Okay. Other things that I can see here is do studio and Location costs? No, we don't really. Do we have some contracted services? Um, we can, but in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select no. So once again, when we are creating this generic chart of accounts, it just saves us time and things that they've generated for us, such as sales tax, or a checking account, right? Or other words, inventory, right? They set that up automatically for us, so we don't actually have to recreate a new one. Okay, just this section right here just only helps us save a couple time, save some time. Okay, are we gonna have advertising and promotions? Of course. Are we gonna have automobile expenses? No, we're not gonna have automobile expenses. Actually, maybe we will. Bank service charges, that's 100%, especially when we're dealing with a checking account, because we need to use our checking system. Okay, so once again, these are just based off of the industry that you selected, right? Such as studio and location costs. If you put a restaurant as your industry, you're not going to see this. So this is what QuickBooks generated based off of what we told QuickBooks, that we are in the arts and writing and / photography industry. So once again, they're generating a generic type of chart of accounts. Now, this doesn't mean this is permanent. Okay? Now, the only thing that you can't do here is you can't just delete, edit, or anything like that. This, once again, is just asking you to select it so then QuickBooks can create it for you. There's nowhere on here that says that you can edit the information, delete the information, because it's just asking you to select what you think it could be a possibility of an account that you could have, right? Instead of having to create it on your own. So in this case, I've gone through some of the lists. Once again, if you had to take a couple minutes to look at this and go through each account and see which one do you think is necessary. But in most cases, if you already have a predetermined chart of accounts, you can unselect all of them and upload your chart of accounts automatically into QuickBooks. They make it that feasible. Very easy, very compatible, very quick and easy. In this case, since I'm starting my company from scratch, I'm not quite sure what kind of accounts I will need. Now, once you've determined your chart of accounts, right? Usually that's something that we're going to work on. That's the next thing that we're going to work on. But usually you should have some kind of predetermined, or at least some kind of idea of what your chart of accounts should typically look like, especially when you are creating your business plan or creating your company file, right? You have some kind of idea. You're going to have sales, you're going to have inventory, etc., etc. So once again, these are not permanent. We can always modify them later on, which is later on in the chapter. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now we reach the end and it says, congratulations, you have finally created your company file. Okay, and then we could go ahead and click go to setup. Okay. Once you do that, now it's going to open up our QuickBooks homepage. It's going to also, since we have the icon bar here, right, the menu bar. So the first thing it's going to ask you is, what should you set up first? Should you set up your people, your lists, your items that you sell, or should you set up your bank account? Now, once again, we will learn how to set up our people, right, in chapter 4 and 2, as well as chapter 10, right? So chapter 4 is dealing with our vendors. Chapter 2 is dealing with our customers. And chapter 11 is dealing with our employees. So we'll save this for another day. Okay? Next one says that we're going to be entering in your products. This will be chapter 7. Okay, this will be tomorrow. Okay, so the next thing that we should do is we should actually create a bank account. Now, once again, here you're entering in more sensible data. Okay, So what should you call your checking account? I'm just going to call it checking. And what number is my checking? What's my account number? Hello? Are you guys still there?
Yeah, just looking for it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're here. I just thought I'd let somebody else speak.
Okay. So let me see. So here we're at congratulations. So we're at the page 354. So we're going to set up our bank account. I think that says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay. So of course your account number is not going to look like that. It's going to look a lot more extensive than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But once again, this is a fake business, fake company. Okay. If you have an account balance now, they recommend you to not enter anything in here because we'll talk about that in a few seconds. Is that the proper way to enter in an opening balance is to either write a journal entry or to modify it in your chart of accounts. Because the one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to say that I have $20,000 debit here, but where's the rest of the money, right? Where's your equal and opposite credit? So you definitely want to make sure you keep your account balances to your journals, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and click continue. Now it's going to ask you, well, you just entered in your bank account. So QuickBooks, they can offer you two things. They can offer you to make personal checkbooks for your company. Would you like to order it? And in this case, I'm going to say no, thank you. Because if you do that, it's going to automatically pop up that QuickBooks into it, and it's going to actually pretty much set a real order. And in this case, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we say no thanks, and we're going to go ahead and click continue. Now that we've set up our bank account, right, once again, this is setting up our people is going to be in chapter 2, 4, and 10, and my items are 7. So I'm going to go ahead and click start working. So once again, now that I saved everything, okay, and I've created my company file, right? They give you, what always pops up is your insights on what's new in QuickBooks. We don't care. So here I have my infamous homepage, okay, and I have my icon bar, and I have my menu bar, all right? Any questions in regards to setting up your company file?
No.
No? Okay, since we still have a few minutes, now, as you guys remember, right? We just filled out the Easy Step interview, okay? There was a lot of content, a lot of things that we set up, such as setting up our inventory. We set up our sales. We set up at least having employees, right? So if you look here, right? We said that we do have inventory. So this section right here is your inventory, okay? We also said that we're going to create estimates right here. We also said that we're going to create statements right here, okay? We also said that we're going to keep track of time right here. Now, again, on tomorrow, we're going to take a look at how we actually customize our home page and etc. etc. So I'm not going to go ahead and dive into that, but what I do want to notice is that every question that we answered, here they all pop up right here. Okay, so as we talked about the Easy Step interview, the Easy Step interview basically helps you set up your company file in a way where it's able for you to create your transactions or customize your home page. Now, once again, we'll talk about more in depth with that tomorrow. But the one thing I do want to show you is that now that you've created your company file, we have my home page, all right? A few things I was going to talk about is that we talked about setting up users and passwords, right? So that's gonna be something that we're gonna skip way forward towards, but it's definitely something I do want to show you. Now, as we've talked about this, right? If you have employees, right? Especially that we just entered in our bank account, right? You should definitely think that we need to secure our information right now. So what you can do is we're gonna go up to company. So for you guys, if you guys are using your version of QuickBooks, whether you did the trial version or the actual the 30-day trial, it could be company or it could be accountant for you. Now in this case, I'm showing you exactly how it is when you're using Pro Premier or Enterprise. You're going to be going to company, and the first, or not the first thing, but if you scroll down, you should see set up users and passwords. And you hit this, then it says set up a user. You can also manage change your password. So in this case, we don't have anything as far as that login settings, right? Things like that, okay? And yes, so once again, that's how you do it. Okay, I also want you to see, so remember when we build our generic chart of accounts, if we go ahead and click right here in this icon on our home page, chart of accounts, there it is. These are the generic accounts that we decided to select, right? And we'll take a look when we come back from the break how to actually create the chart of accounts. But yes, as you can see, these were the items that I've selected from my Easy Step interview, and I can modify them as much as I want. If there's something I see that I don't need, I can delete it anytime I want. Okay, so once again, this is only upon setup though. Okay, but if you already have an account balance, you definitely want to be very careful, and we'll talk more about that when we get back from the break. So everything that we've set up so far is indeed here. Okay. And once again, the minute you close this, it's going to ask you to set up a password. So once again, I'm not going to set up a password just because I don't want to lock myself out here, but that's okay. So if you click on set up users and passwords, what you can notice is that, let's say I do want to set up a user. So when you click on this is very crucial that you do actually know. When you're going to go into setting up users, right, you as the accountant, right, are the only one who is able to have full access to the QuickBooks. Because if you're the one that's generating the chart of accounts, you're the one that's creating the company file, then therefore you are the admin of the QuickBooks company file, okay? Make sure that you're aware that you are the admin, okay? So yes, you can make modifications to the admin because you are the admin. However, you can also set up other users. So for example, when we talked about having someone who's in charge of PR, PR, payroll, right? So if they're in charge of payroll, so their title should be HR, okay, human resources. If they're going to be in charge of just payroll, you can actually limit them on what they can see on QuickBooks. So that's a neat feature that you can have for QuickBooks. Other things that you can do too is like once you set up your specific users, like for example, I may have a sales representative, a billing representative, right? Someone who's only strictly there for billing. Okay? You can create as many users as you want, right? But the only thing is, it depends on which program, right? Depending whether you have Desktop Pro, allows them to basically how many users can log in at one time. So as you remember, Pro only allows up to 1 to 3 users at one time. So once again, you could create as many users, but they may not be able to access the file at the same time. Okay? But as we talked about enterprise, right? You could create as many users, and the limit is up to 30 users at one time. Okay? So there you go. Since we have time, I'm going to go ahead and show you a quick example real quick on what I mean when I can set up my users. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add a user. Okay, so what kind of user am I going to create? So I'm going to create this position as human resources. Okay, and here my password is going to be payroll. Okay, payroll, I don't know. So it says confirm password. So once again, I did capital P, payroll. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and click next. So here, this is where the question is, would you like to have them have access to all the information? Now, especially if you are the admin, you want to make sure that you have full control over the company file, because you definitely don't want to see any manipulations of any works that are in QuickBooks, right? You definitely don't want someone who isn't in sales, or, have someone, sell an item to themselves and not record it. You definitely don't want your users to have full access to everything that we have as an admin or as the accountant. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I select this, that I'm going to select specific areas that this user can have access to. So you're going to go through this. I'm going to click next. So first question is going to be, well, if this person, right, who's I named as human resources, do they have access, okay, to sales and accounts receivable? In this case, no. You definitely don't want them to have access, so no access at all. Okay. Next question is, do they have are they able to see any purchases or any accounts payable? No. Right? Their main goal is just to be only taking care of our employees. Do they have access to checking and credit cards? I'm going to say they have selected access, because of course we can create checking accounts, right? So they can only create transactions only. Okay, so once again, payroll is directly correlated to your checking account, so they can only create the transactions. You definitely want to make sure that they, if you are a strict type of company, and we'll take a second and take a look at what it's like to be able to delete stuff. In most cases, you're actually recommended not to delete anything. So if that's the case, then you definitely want to make sure that it goes through the accountant or the admin to be able to delete those transactions. So in this case, they're only able to just create transactions only. I guess they can print transactions too. Okay. What about inventory? Of course, human resources has nothing to do with inventory, so I'm not going to have them have access to the inventory. Time and tracking, absolutely, because they need to be able to see the employees, right? They need to be able to see their timesheets. So in this case, tracking is something that I can give them, this HR person, full access to. Okay. Next one, payroll and employees. Absolutely, they have full access, right? If you do selected, it's limited to what they can do. No, they get full access to the whole payroll system. Okay, and then now it says sensitive accounting activities. So in this case, it's pretty much like, do they have access to all that information? I'm going to say they have no access. They need to get permission from the accountant or the admin to be able to take a look at this. Sensitive financial reports. No, they shouldn't have access to that. Okay? Charging or deleting or changing or deleting transactions. Now, this is what I've mentioned before. If they mess up on payroll, are you going to allow them to change it? In this case, I'm going to trust them that if they made a mistake in payroll, they can manipulate or they can delete it, right? Now, there's also dangers with that because they can fraud you. They can write a check to themselves because they're the payroll. But we also have to remember the check process goes through two people. So you have someone who's writing it and then someone who's signing it. So most cases, even if they do attempt to do that, they're not going to be able to get away with it. So in this case, if they mess up, yes, I'm going to allow them to be able to change the transaction. All right. Should this user also have the ability to change or delete the transactions? Yes, I'm going to say yes. Just because, especially on a corporation, right? If their own person can't delete their own transactions and have to come up to the accountant to bother them for their work, it's only, assumed that are you able to help this person at any given time? So in this case, I'm going to allow them. So here, once again, these are the checklist of things that you just checked mark. You can change them if you'd like right then and there. But right now, that looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish. So here, now I have an HR position. Okay. So let's take a look at admin right here. If you click on admin, this is where you got that same exact window. Can I create my password? In this case, I'll go ahead and create one. I'm going to say it's 12345. Confirm password 12345. All right. So when they ask you this, they always have what's called a security question in case you forget your password. So in this case, they have a challenge question. So you're going to click this just in case you forget your password. I could do name of your high school, city of where you went to high school, name of your oldest niece, okay, oldest nephew. I'll choose this one and I'll say it's Bob. Okay. B-O-B. And I'm going to go ahead. You can either go next or you can finish this off. Let's see what next entails. Okay, wait. It says that this password you've entered is not complex. Okay, I guess I need to do A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. So here they also, oh my gosh, is it again? This password is, that you entered is not complex. Oh man. Okay, let's do AP. So capital A, P, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So even QuickBooks is telling me to be even more secure about my stuff. That is actually pretty good. So A, P, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And okay, good. Success. So there you go. I set my password for the QuickBooks. So therefore, every time I log in, I need to log in as admin. right? And it's going to ask me for my code, all right? Or my password. Every time I log in, it's going to be AP12345, okay? And I'm going to click that X button. Now, once again, we also can take a look at switching to multi-user. So we'll talk about, I'm already here. So once again, if you want to allow access for multiple users to be able to access the file at one time, you go ahead and click that, go to File on the menu bar, and you're going to click Switch to multi-user mode. Okay? So right now it's on single user mode, meaning I'm the only person that has access to it. Because I am, or because when you create the file, you must be the admin. Okay? Now, as the admin, you're the only one that's able to create the users as well, because you can block off specific parts that the user can have access to. Now, once again, when you open up this file, right, and you put in the password, depending on who it is, it's going to determine what you can see. So in this case, if you want to have it viewed for everybody, you just click on, or have other people have access at the same time as you. You just go ahead and click on that file menu button, and you click on switch to multi-user mode. Now, once again, there's only me. This is my personal computer, right? I'm at home, so my network, there's nobody else that has QuickBooks. So in this case, I'm not going to go ahead and do it. But that's pretty much it. So as you do that, you must be at a office that can be shared on one network for everybody to have access to the file at one time. And of course, you need to make sure that all the computers that are using this have QuickBooks on it. Okay.
When you do that, everybody has to use the same password?
No. So remember when we
They can
created...
set up their own?
No. Only the admin can set up the other users. So that's exactly what we just did, right? We just set up the HR.
Okay.
So that means if I allow multiple users, right? Since I've only set up one extra user, the only person that can access this at the same time as me is my human resources. I would have to create the other accounts. So the one thing about admin is that you are the only one who can create other users. You are the only one that can create the company file and have access to everything. Well, you can also create a user to have access with everything as well. But what I'm trying to say is that usually the admin is in control of most of the things that happen when it deals with QuickBooks, especially creating the company file and creating the chart of accounts. Okay. Now, what happens if you actually end up forgetting your password and you end up forgetting your security code, right? Then the only thing that you have to do is you have to resort to seeking Intuit's help. Because once you've set up a password, right? If I said I completely forgot what my password for this company file is, unfortunately, and you're unsuccessful using the security thing, unfortunately you have to call up or use the QuickBooks to access the QuickBooks help. Go to intuit.com, get support and help, and they are the only ones that can change the password for you. Okay? But as an admin and you're doing it for a user, you could just reset their password as well. So that's a few things that you need to know. If you, as the admin, forget the password to your own company file, you must go through Intuit to reveal it or to reset the password for you. Okay. So once again, I dived towards the end of the book for this exact scenario. So just because the next part that we're going to deal with is the chart of accounts, and we're going to take a look at actually opening our company file. Okay? Any questions?